We're the hydradenitis super divas. If you've got HS, you'll want to meet us. It's not your fault, put the shame to a halt. HS divas know how to have a ball. The hydradenitis super divas. Put the shame to a halt, cause it's not your fault.
Hey guys, it's Brinley with the Hydradenitis Super Adivas. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Season 2. Just a heads up, if you are watching on YouTube, you will not see any video of the hosts. Unfortunately, the recording was stuck on time-lapse, which is not super helpful. So we do have all of the video of the guest who was on Zoom. That's perfect. If you're not watching on YouTube, this has zero bearing on you at all. Everything will still run just as it should. So just a heads up that, again, we won't have any video of the host, but we hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Hydradenitis Super Adivas. I am here with my two co-hosts, Mahala and Sid. And today we have on as a guest, Cristina Curp. And she is the Castaway Kitchen. So I'm not sure if you've heard of her or follow her on social, but she makes some damn delicious looking food. She also has HS. So we are interested to hear today about her journey with HS, how she ended up here, and how you've been like such an inspiration food wise and all of the fun things that you do, because you always look like you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
So super jealous because I'm not always a fan of cooking. So I'm like, if I could just do it like her, it'd be much better. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to get to like virtually sort of in real meet you guys finally. Yeah, so I mean, you know, like a lot of us, I've had HS since I was 13. And like most of us, it was like the worst. Especially at like, why does it onset at that age particularly? Like, let me just impact the most trauma ever. Like,
right.
That's it, you know? And so when I was about 2 years postpartum. I was about starting to wean my son. And at that point, my chest had just gotten like the worst it ever been. And it also spread to under my breast at that time, where like I was stage 3 inner thigh growing buttocks, stage like 1, 2 under my arms, but it had never affected my boobs before. And like, you know, when you're nursing a baby, and I nursed him for 2 years, which is probably why I only have one kid. But it made my HS so much worse. And like, it started getting it. It was like, and I was just kind of like, not my boobs. Like, I kind of felt like, can't I have anything? But
yeah.
like ravaged by this condition. And so it was at that point where I was like, something's got to change. I have this, we had just been stationed in my ex-husband's active duty. And so we were stationed in Hawaii. So I'm living in this hotel room while we're looking for a house, and I have this baby, and my health is a mess, and I'm in pain, and I'm miserable. And I just had that, like, I can't anymore. I can't, I can't live like this moment. And so before being a mom, a stay-at-home mom, I was a restaurant chef. And so I kind of took to food, you know, and my mom, who's kind of like super woo-woo and like a hippie, was always like, I had seen a lot of holistic doctors and stuff over the years, and people who tried to help me with my HS after like antibiotics and steroids and stuff kind of didn't work for me. And so I had done paleo, and I remember like feeling better, but things that I didn't know back then, like I was still, I was in my 20s and like early 20s, and like drinking and smoking cigarettes and still eating like a ton of my trigger foods because I didn't know what they were back then.
Mm-hmm.
So about to turn 30 and a mom, and I wasn't drinking and smoking anymore. And I just really did the research, you know, and I was like, I just went down this rabbit hole of like internet stuff. And it was actually, we all know Tara Grant, right? Author of The Hidden Plague.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a blog post. She did a guest post on Rob Wolf's website, like a gajillion years ago. And it was this like, you know, back in the internet search days, which nowadays you can't Google the way you used to back then. There's like way too many filters. But back then, literally searching about holistic HS stuff, I ran across this article, and this woman was talking about tomatoes driving her HS. And I was like, the fuck, you know? And so I had this kind of like, what moment? And I was like, okay. So food can impact this. And I had thought it had before. I love eggplant. Like eggplant was like my favorite food in the whole wide world. So I used to eat roasted eggplant, like by the sheet pan, like all day, every day. And I remember one time in San Diego before we moved to, like postpartum, like thinking to myself, having one of those moments of like having a massive flare and just being like, hold on, was it all the eggplant I ate? And then like, nah, no way. Like, absolutely not the vegetables, you know? So in that moment, I had this like light bulb go off. And so I just went deep into the paleo sphere back then, this was like 2015, right? So this was when that stuff was really popping off. And in a nutshell, it changed my life. I mean, I kind of went down that rabbit hole, and like probably came out in the last year or two where I started eating like grains and stuff again. But I really just did paleo, Whole30, autoimmune protocol specifically because the nightshades. And yeah, because I'm a chef or was a chef. And so I guess I am again. So because I have the cooking skills.
You are, girl.
Yeah. I was like, man, I can make this food taste good and I can share this stuff online. So people who are like thinking that eating healthy has to be like boiled chicken and lettuce, because that's what I used to think when I was younger, and yeah, it was so transformative. I mean, it wasn't easy. It wasn't fast by any means, but I really believed that like this was the way, like Mandalorian style, like this is the way. And so I stuck with it. It took me like 2 years, but I've been in remission for many years now. And it's mind blowing. Every day I'm grateful and still kind of like pinch me. Is this like, did this happen? And so I share that online because I feel like we're such a lonely condition, and it's incredible how many people are like, I thought I was alone. Or but I had until I saw your videos, because they're literally too embarrassed to talk to anyone about it. So yeah.
And did you start out like going and on your videos like way in the past doing HS focused, and then like did your culinary career just grow again from that, or how does that work?
So no, so I started with the food, and actually like a lot of, like I remember when I finally posted about like I'm doing all this because of HS. Like I had kind of hinted at it, but I wasn't, I never shared my life publicly before. And this was, again, back in 2015, which seems like a million years ago, but I didn't feel totally comfortable sharing very intimately at that point. Because as we know, I'm sure you guys all know how hard it can be to share
your
life online, and how harsh people can be. So I was kind of very protective of that. So I just shared recipes, like I'm, paleo recipes, AIP recipes, just kind of as a food blogger. That was just my thing. But as I started to truly see the impact on my health, I started to share more about that. And then I finally had this like coming out, like, and I literally called it that, like coming out, I have HS. And I remember how many people that I knew my entire life, my friends from my childhood, like ex-boyfriends being like, what? Like, hold on. And then people also coming out of the woodwork being like, I have this too. Or my husband has this too. And it continues to, even in my personal life, now that I talk about it publicly, the people that come to me and be like, hey, by the way, me too, so it really was kind of like a huzzah, moment.
Yeah, it's insane how many people, as soon as you come out about your condition, how many other people are around you that like it's insane. It's so crazy. And it's just that catalyst, that one person having the courage to say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I have, and I don't want to carry the shame of that anymore, to like start that change. It's amazing.
100%, because it takes the shame away, because there's nothing to be ashamed of, but we internalize that shame. And I think a lot of it has to do with the age in which a lot of us get this, right? And also the fact that at that age, I remember my girlfriends at that point. I grew up in Miami, so good Lord, talk about like already, the place of like hairless, skinny, like plastic. And so it was already hard being a bigger girl, like growing up overweight, and also thinking that was why I had this, and it was contributing to it. And also the fact that like, the way that girls talk about their bodies in middle school and high school, of like, ill, like if, oh my God, like body hair, or like, oh my God, ingrown hairs. And I'm over here like, no comment. And it was hard because, again, growing up in the tropics, like bathing suits, boat days, pool parties were like all the time, and I was just that person with like shorts on always at the pool or at the beach or whatever, or like not taking my shirt off and things like that. And people just probably assumed it was because of my weight that I don't want to show my body. Little did they know, had I had clear skin, I would have been like,
Yes, absolutely. And do you have like, how would you advise people, because what we know, food isn't a trigger for everyone, and identifying your trigger foods can be really difficult. So how would you advise people to like go about that whole process? Because, going like straight to paleo or whatever is a really big change for a lot of people. So like, how do you think the best way to go about that is?
Well, I think that I've like, and I always say, like, I mean, I will die on this hill. When you have a chronic illness, whether it's a trigger or not, it'll impact your overall wellness. Because like we are what we eat, right? So like hormones, right? So like we know that like hormones can be a trigger for HS. When people say like, well, my HS isn't diet related, it's hormone related, I'm like, well, let's talk about it. So like, you know, androgens, right? Which is like androgen, high levels of androgen, which is often the reason why the hormone driver for HS, right? In us is because we have higher levels of testosterone, not enough estrogen. Estrogen's anti-inflammatory, androgens drive inflammation. Also the way that androgens, like the higher androgens cause like more sebum production, which helps in like the follicular occlusion, right? So it drives that, right? So like those hormone imbalances, which drive like the follicular occlusion plus the overall inflammation in our body, those things are like our hormone balance is very linked to metabolic health, right? So like insulin resistance is a big driver for these hormone imbalances, PCOS, which we also know can be very metabolically linked as well. So like insulin resistance being an underlying cause of a lot of these hormone imbalances, right? Or some people, again, might just have natural imbalances, but hormone therapy can help there, but also the way that we eat. So like our gut health is, and our stress and our nutrient density, all of that is really connected to hormone health. So although it might not be a direct link, there's going to be that like trickle down effect of like how you manage your blood sugar, which manages your stress, and your stress, which manages your hormones. So it is going to be like, it might not be about a trigger food, right? It might just be about reversing insulin resistance, or it might be about, you know, like optimizing your thyroid, or there's a lot of different ways in which the kind of root cause can trickle down to, well, how does food then affect that, right? And I just don't think that we're having like the opportunity to investigate that within our own care plans, because it's not the way that we're taught to think about our health, right? We're taught to be like, well, A, B equals C, and it's not always that straightforward. So, you know, people ask a lot, what did you do? And I'm always like, and I always tell people, I'm like, man, let me tell you, if I could say like, this is the formula, I'd be a fucking millionaire.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not, and I'm not, because I'm not going to tell you, right? I'm not like a snake oil salesman. And I think people like hate that online because they always think I'm like gatekeeping. I'm like, no, I'm not going to like, I can't tell you what I did, but I can teach you to figure out what could work for you. Right. And another thing,
it's a tool in your HS toolbox is basically what it is. Yeah,
exactly. And it can take so many, and there's so many factors which contribute to these things, right? So we know that like chronic stress is something that, or stress in general is something that is so overlooked, right? Because chronic stress is going to mess up, literally cause leaky gut. Like just the way it impairs our digestion can cause leaky gut. It can drive cortisol, or like chronic like high adrenal, which is again really like the adrenaline, which is really inflammatory. So
which
like,
we've just learned is a hormone and can also trigger
lesson having this podcast.
Exactly. So the connections that we're having there with like, but the way that we manage our stress, and like nowadays, especially in modern days, like, and I would argue that even in the last like 3, 4, 5 years, like people just have like underlying overall chronic stress levels, like the state of the world, the economy,
and everybody's walking around like, it's fine, I'm fine, everything's fine.
Everything's on fire, it's fine.
Dumpster fire.
5 flares later, it's like, you're not fine.
Right. And so it's so hard because, you know, you can quote unquote do all the right things, but if you're not doing the things to like manage that, and I also feel like you can't live in a bubble. So I hate people who are like, I wake up every morning and I do yoga for an hour and I make my like 20-step morning matcha latte. I'm like, who? No, like ain't nobody got time for that. Like, you know, if you're a mom, hell no. Like my morning is like wake up, pack lunches, make it run out the door. You know, but we can within our reality do the things that like will help us. So for example, one of my favorite like relaxation tools is like, I'm a huge, like I love the specifically Reiki ASMR YouTube videos. They are like my zen. Every day I watch one, whether it's like for like I don't nap, but like I'll take a 10-minute, 20-minute like break where I lay down and listen to one, or before bed. And it's my like guided meditation. I go on walks, you know, I have boundaries with my family and even like my child where I'm like, I need to be alone for a little bit. I'll be right back. Like I'm gonna lock myself in my room for 10 minutes. Don't light anything on fire. You know, so that's one. So before you even look at your food, I think it's important to look at like your lifestyle, right? Because there's big rocks and little rocks, right? Food is almost a little rock. You want to micro, people are like, oh, but how about oxalates? Or should I go carnivore because of the whatever? I'm like, oh my God, little rocks. Like don't go biohacking your way into like oblivion if you're not dealing. Are you sleeping? If you're not sleeping, doesn't matter what you eat.
Like I get 3.5 hours, fine,
Yeah.
you know?
No. So I think, so yeah. So I think first is big rocks, lifestyle. Are you sleeping? Are you managing your stress? Are you in a safe, healthy place? Like if you're constantly like not feeling great, you're not going to.
I think it requires a lot of people to take the look at themselves too, when you're like, okay, if you take the food off the table and you kind of like look at your life in different lights, a lot of people don't want to, because you're like, okay, if your stress is a huge trigger, ma'am, what's stressing you out? And a lot of times people don't want to like be realistic about what's stressing them out. Like maybe it's your partner, maybe you're in a toxic relationship, maybe you're a people pleaser, and that's like stressing you out. Your anxiety is also stressing you out. Like, so a lot of people don't want to be real about that and look in the mirror and be like, okay, like we're in a stressful time in our life and we kind of need to like, we need this to fizzle down. We need to figure it out. And people aren't ready for like that level of self-awareness.
What is it like
too.
to not feel stressed? I don't even know what that feels like anymore.
Right. And I think that it's okay. Like, so my life is stressful. My life, I mean, like seriously, I feel like since 2020, it's been like dumpster fire after dumpster fire. I mean, when I talk about like series of unfortunate events, it's like even just in 2020, like my husband at the time was deployed. I literally was like single momming it during lockdown. My second cookbook launched March 10th, 2020. So I literally had to like cancel my book tour, like shut everything down. Literally after like worked on this for 2 years. We then built a house. The house got broken into. We got attacked by dogs. Like, I mean, literally it's one of those things. And then we PCS moved to Hawaii. Then like 5 months later went through a divorce. Like literally it's been like, holy shit. And through that process, I've had 2 flares that were stress driven. And they lasted maybe like 48 hours and then went down. And it was one of those things where I tell people, because I can leverage other tools in my toolbox, because life's going to happen, but you can leverage other tools in your toolbox so you don't go,
That's beautifully said.
Yeah. And I think that it's, so we have to be realistic, but I agree, like Sid, like, I think that that's the hardest thing that people don't want to look at.
I had to look at the stress eating. Like I'm stressed. Now I'm binge eating. And that's also like, it may not be exactly the food that I'm binging, you know what I mean? But I'm like, be for real, I'm a toxic binge eater. Sugar is my baby girl. So I'm like, it's not a good situation. I have to figure out a new tool that when I get that stress, I can find something different to do than go binge eat. And it's hard. I'll be the first person to say that this journey, figuring all this shit out, it could like, you want to give up a lot of times, but then there's times where I have multiple flares at a time that I'm like, oh no, girl, we got to like get back on the road to remission or healing or whatever we want to call it. Cause like having multiple flares at one time will really
wreck your life,
take you out.
Yeah,
it does. It stops everything for sure. I feel like, one of the things that I was like, my mom, I was put on Weight Watchers when I was like 8 years old. Like I was a lifelong dieter, right? So like, I was like, my mom, bless, almond mom, right? She struggled with her weight. She got with diets together. And so I had like really crazy, like disordered eating patterns because I grew up just like with the notion of like, I had 2 sisters that were skinny and a mom who yo-yoed in weight. And when she was big, she was sad. When she was small, she was happy. And like, she did like those extreme, like cabbage soup and only peppers or whatever. And she would like, I mean, from like a size 4 to a size, 18 and back again. And there I was just in the middle, kind of like, okay. And so I had really bad binge eating habits too, and I think that those are hard to break, especially when you love food. And when people say like food is only sustenance, I'm like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Food is my passion. Food is like, food is my happiness. Food is how is my love language, how I cook for people. Like it's everything. Like it's literally my career. Like, and so I think we can still have an emotional relationship with food and enjoy food and splurge, because I think that there's like, I don't know, it's cultural where, like, I think it's part of being the human experience, but doing so in a way that doesn't cause harm to ourselves.
Yeah, for sure.
Like someone asked me the other day on TikTok, they were like, talking about trigger foods or eating something that, and then afterwards feeling that, how you feel it, you feel like the bubbling under your skin and you're like, oh no, it's coming, and someone's like, I would die for a mint milkshake with whipped cream on top. And I was like, I got you. Like, so delicious, makes a no sugar added, dairy free, really tasty mint ice cream. You whip that up with some almond milk, and they make the co-whip, and you can make one. Like, sure, go ahead and splurge, because it's this kind of thing but you can do a version of it that's not going to trigger your HS or
that's why we love you. That's why we love you, because you're not out here like, eat these kale chips.
Yeah.
Go to Whole Foods, get some seaweed. It's gonna cure you. because you're making realistic alternatives for us to have. And I send people your way all the time. I'm like, yo, listen, I'm not the food HS girl.
Yeah.
I'm not. If you listen to me, you're gonna flare tomorrow because I'm toxic. But don't follow the Castaway Kitchen, because buy her meal plan for $1 or whatever, because it's a realistic food plan. It doesn't look depressing.
Yeah. No, it should be enjoyable. Food should be enjoyable. And I think that's part of the process, like not going too far into the restriction thing. And also, like, you mentioned earlier, Brittany, like, going strict to paleo. So I actually work with people on like tiers. Like some people, if you just go gluten-free, dairy-free, minimize sugar intake, you'll see improvement. And then you do that for 2-3 months, no dice. Okay, let's escalate a little bit. Let's, cut out alcohol. Let's cut out nightshades. Let's see what happens. No, okay, 2-3 months, you feel a little better, not so much. Okay, great. Now let's escalate. Now maybe let's do grain-free. Maybe let's take out soy and corn. So there's a way to like slowly like ease into it, right? And like in my course, that's what I do, because I know that rip the Band-Aid off doesn't work for everybody. I'm a rip the Band-Aid off kind of girl because I'm like a psychopath, but I'm also just like, it's like my ADHD, like hyper focused stuff that like, if I'm going to do something, like the minute I think about it, I'm like, I have to go all the way. But I know that's not for everybody. And the great thing is that a lot of people don't have to go full elimination, especially the stage 1, stage 2 folks. Oh my gosh, they see phenomenal improvement making minor dietary changes. And it's so worth it, right? Because if you can do the least amount possible in changing your diet with the maximum like effect in your symptoms, that's what we're going at.
Sign me up.
Right.
I'm like, how much is your course?
I was the person who had to go like 125%, like all the way and then some.
Yeah.
So I always tell people, like, I know, because I had to go all the way. Like I tried not to, and I was just like, okay, here we go. And then add another layer, and then add another layer, and then add another layer. But I also feel like I had messed up my body so much by the time I had gotten to even trying to do it holistically that I had a lot of work to do. Like, not only was I like chronic antibiotic user my whole, and Motrin and NSAIDs, which also lead to like, gut issues, which sucks because as we all know, when you have HS, like ibuprofen be your best friend, but
bestie.
It contributes, NSAIDs are a contributing factor to like leaky gut and dysbiosis and stuff, right? So after that, and antibiotics and all this stuff, and then years, and then like I said, alcohol and cigarette use, and then like drug use when I was younger, like I was acute, which again was part of probably my like really unhealthy coping mechanisms that I had when I was younger, Sid, when I wasn't looking at my shit, And so, oh my God. So by the time I was like turning 30, like I hadn't put my body through the ringer. So I had a lot of healing to do.
And what do you offer for like HS patients? Do you have a special program that you offer for them? Or you had mentioned like your course, like tell me more about that, because I think the hardest part as an HS patient, if you're looking into trying to change your diet or go this route, is like, where the fuck do you start? It's so overwhelming, and so many people on social media are throwing things down your throat about like, do this, go all carnivore, go. And it's like, it becomes overwhelming. And so you kind of just back out and you're like, not for me. None of this is for me.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. Sidebar before I get into that course is that I think that that's a big problem in the community, is people talking absolutes. I had someone be like, eat raisins every day, it's going to cure your HS. And I was like,
oh my God.
I've heard that one too.
Bro, stop. And then like, or like, it's this, or it's a parasite, or it's a,
you just need a shot of apple cider vinegar every morning on an empty stomach, and then it's going to be cured.
Yeah. People are insane. And like, I feel like, I'm like, okay, I'm glad that worked for you. But like when people talk like in absolutes, and like, that's why when people get to me and they're like, I've tried literally everything and nothing works. And I'm like, yeah, but what have you tried? Like weird shit that you read on like a blog, like in like on a Facebook group, like the Facebook groups can be pretty toxic sometimes.
Yes.
And I think that I'm glad if you found something that works specifically for you. Like if it's the apple cider vinegar person, it might be because that helped with like their like stomach acid production, and like help with their blood sugar regulation, which is what their root cause was. If it was the person eating raisins and why that worked for them, it's because raisins actually help kill like certain bacteria in your mouth, which maybe was leading to the HS because it was spreading to different parts of their body, plus the nutrients that raisins have, which might have been their specific nutrient deficiencies which were driving their HS. You know what I'm saying? But that doesn't mean it works for everybody.
That's a book, a one-on-one call.
Exactly. So anyway, but the biggest thing with HS is that people don't even know what it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I have in my courses, there's a big section of what is HS, and we cover the genetic factors, the hormonal factors, the metabolic factors, like all the different, the gut factors, the autoimmune factors. So it's literally like, here are the 9 reasons which why you could have HS. We talk in depth about the follicular occlusion and the over keratinization of the skin. And I link like the recent studies about that, because I think people really need to know like what's happening with their body. So there's a big education piece up front. I want people to have body literacy. Like I'm such a big advocate for body literacy. Then we talk about the gut connection, like autoimmunity and leaky gut and the drivers for that. And like the connection between inflammation and the gut. And then the connection between why what we eat impacts all of this stuff. There's a big section on hormones, which a lot about what I talked about earlier, you know, that goes in depth on that. And then we go into an elimination, but I talk about like, I break it down in tiers. So it's like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And I like make it really like the list of, and like, not just what you're omitting, but why you're omitting it, as well as meal plan. So there's like, and here's what to eat.
Dude, that's the key, what you said right there, the meal plan, because that right. You can give someone a list of what they can and can't eat, but if you don't tell them like what to make,
oh, forget about it. Right.
And I ran into that when I asked you about the eating for your blood type, because I was on one of your lives one day and I was like, no, this girl swears that like, if I just eat for my blood type, like my whole life is going to change. And then you're like, well, there's been studies to do. I was like, okay, girl, like, yeah. Okay, I'll follow you.
there's like a group of like old school, like holistic nutritionists, but like from like who like got their certs like maybe 10, 20 years ago that like live and die by that school of thought. But it's totally debunked. And again, you can't group people into these boxes. There's no generalizations of anything that works for anybody, which is the hard part, right? Of like managing our health, which is why it's so hard for people to figure out. But that's why I like when people do elimination protocols for themselves, because they're going to figure out what works for them. And again, even within the elimination protocol, is it a cure-all? No, that's why I like people to go slowly and even then journal, because even let's say if histamine is a contributing factor to your HS, right? Because like mast cells, you know, like the mast, like having like mast cell activation syndrome or something like that, which is driving your inflammation. If you're eating a shit ton of avocado, which is like not omitted in like any elimination, avocado is super high histamine, you know, so that could be driving that. I know someone who their trigger food is chicken. I know someone who their trigger food is broccoli. Like you never know, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's about really doing that N=1 experiment, food journaling, then doing the reintroductions, which I do walk people through. And then I have a whole section on lifestyle, stress management, sleep. I talk about the lymphatic system and why moving our body, and explain like why sometimes when you work out, especially at the beginning, it just gets worse before it gets better because of the lymphatic system and the way our body detoxes. Mm-hmm. And then I have a big section on like supplement support, but like you can do supplements or you can do this, like chew your food slowly, you know, like kind of like for blood sugar regulation or for hormone support or digestive support. And then I have a section on topical support, because as we know, having good wound care and topical support for your HS is really key. And even when you're doing the dietary changes, you need to have your, you know, like I was always a diehard tea tree oil girl. Like that was my like ride or die, like tea tree oil got me through the worst of it, you know? So I kind of have the different things there that work. And yeah. And I think that's my course. And then I also offer
like you're like a HS, you're like the go of information. I'm like, you just fed us so much.
I do.
And now
I've been researching this a lot for a very long time.
I'm mind blown.
I've been researching this for a really long time, and I continue to read the new research. And, you know, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way, right? Like you get so much input from the community, right? So like whenever someone's like, well, this worked for me, like the raisin thing. Oh no, I went out there and I was like, all right, listen, I see your raisins. Let me see. So I went there and I did all the research on why or why not raisins may or may not work for HS. You know, and when people are telling me these things, I'm like, kind of like quantifying the data, right? Which is why people say like, oh, trigger foods. I'm like, well, they're different for everybody. But what I'm getting from not just my experience, but the community is nightshades seem to be a common trend. Dairy seems to be a common trend. Sugar seems to be a common trend. Does that mean they're trigger foods for everybody? No. But are they for some people or many people? Yes, you know? But the language we use is so important. Like there's no absolutes.
Yes. And we find that all the time. It was like with the L-lysine fad, like everyone hop on L-lysine and add this amino acid in great, huge quantities. Like, whoa, please don't. Like, we got to figure out, you know, what happens to your body if you overload that amino acid. Like, and we're just, I think people are so desperate for help that they will go to like where we flock like sheep to whatever somebody says. And so I don't think that a lot of the patients have any idea what impact they can make on other people, both positive and negative, by saying like, do this, as opposed to this worked for me.
Well, we also want the easiest result. Let's be real. So it's way easier to flop to apple cider vinegar and kind of like you said, Sid, just not take responsibility for all the triggers. First of all, you're amazing. I've just been quiet, like observing, listening, like, wow. Because I think the thing with food and HS too is, let's say a lot of people with HS are overweight. So much of that experience has been being overweight. That's your number one issue, like lose the weight. But we also know there's so much more that goes into losing weight, even to get to that step. So I think it's really dope how you're approaching all of this and you're actually taking the time to explain. When I know dietitians who are also just like, lose weight, don't do dairy, don't do this, but they're not explaining why either. So it's really fascinating to hear the reasonings why. Like, incredible. Chef's kiss, seriously.
I'd love to talk about the weight thing really quick, because I'm so passionate about that, because first of all, thin people can have HS. Yes,
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. And also when large people don't, not all large people have HS. So the fact that like, yes, are there mechanisms in which, being overweight can drive inflammation in your body? Yes. Absolutely. But can you be in a larger body and not have inflammation? Like BT dubs, I'm overweight. Like I am quote unquote obese by all means, like by the BMI and all the things, like I'm sitting here 230 pounds, like, and I am in remission and my weight has yo-yoed from, 190 to 230 to 250 back, 230, whatever. And guess what? I've maintained my remission status through that, because my remission didn't come because I lost weight when I initially changed my diet. It was like a side effect. The weight loss was a side effect of chasing remission, but it wasn't why I was in remission. Right.
Yeah.
So my CRP levels are phenomenal. All my inflammatory markers are low. Like I actually have less my CRP is lower now than when I was 30 pounds lighter. Because I was overworking out, I was overtraining, I was doing CrossFit, and that was like kind of hard on my body. But anyway, I think that the conversation around obesity or being overweight driving HS is very dangerous to our community. And I actually have a client that I worked with who had HS and LS, and she actually got into remission of her LS and put her
That's me too.
And put her HS pretty much almost in remission, like significant improvement. And she sent me this email being like, thank you so much. I just had a follow up with my doctor, and like she's so impressed with everything we've done. And she said that her dermatologist who specializes with HS is actually running a research study on eating disorders within the community. Because so many of us are told, especially at a young age, that it's because we're overweight. And so eating disorders within the HS community are rampant. And I see that because people are like, well, I've lost 100 pounds and I've lost this and I still have HS.
Yep. Yeah. And in some cases it's worse.
Surgery. It makes it worse. Right, because you're starving yourself and now you have nutrient deficiencies.
You've created all of these perfect microbiome areas with all of your hanging skin that you now have from your tremendous weight loss, that they don't talk about that potential.
Right.
They only talk about how you need to lose weight. And then, apparently, according to them, that's like losing weight and quitting smoking and you'll be friggin' cured.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah. And it's crazy because again, the rapid weight loss, the hanging skin, nutrient deficiencies, which are a leading cause of like gut issues and autoimmune issues. Oftentimes people don't realize the detox effect. Like we store a lot of all mammals store toxins in our fat, right? And so especially environmental toxins and like a lot of the endocrine disruptors and stuff like that in our environment, we stored a lot of these in our fat. Guess what? When we metabolize that fat, right, which is what happens, like we use it for energy, it goes to the Krebs cycle, and like all that stuff gets released into our bloodstream. So now all of a sudden we're having a detox effect, right? And I know that I have that. Like if I lose 10 pounds, I'm going to have like inflammation in my skin. I feel it. Either I get more razor rash than normal, or I'm going to have some pimples on my face. Like it's your body detoxing. So you have a rapid weight loss and your body's going to be like freaking out. Plus the hormone shifts. A lot of people don't realize when rapid weight loss usually occurs with insane nutrient deficiencies, right? And you're probably losing muscle too. So that's going to make you like less insulin sensitive, like because the more muscle we have, the better our blood sugar is, because like our muscles kind of help absorb glucose. And so you're kind of setting yourself up for failure, right? Doing these crush diets, because you're going to mess up your gut, your hormones, you're going to lose muscle, you're going to have loose skin. Like it's a trap. Like, don't do it. You're going to end up worse.
So I have a question for you. How do you, what's your opinion and thoughts on like fasting or intermittent fasting?
Ooh, good question. So when I was younger, in my younger age, I mean, I think I'm older than all. I'm 38, so I'll be 40. I'll be 39 in June, so I'm older than all of you. I'm pretty sure.
No,
But
I'm 44.
okay,
I got
Yay,
you beat.
high five. So when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, when I was younger, fasting, like I felt like it worked really well for me. You know, I think that it did help reset my hunger hormones. I do feel like I had some leptin resistance, and that helped. However, what I realized as I got older, like for me turning 35, which granted I turned 35 in like the thick of the pandemic. So with all that stress, that year of unfortunate events I mentioned, so my hormones freaked out, and all of a sudden fasting was like, like just my body was like, absolutely not, absolutely not. Nope, pump the brakes. We don't like this. To the point where when I was fasting, my blood sugar was high because of the stress. Like I could literally go run 2 miles fasted and come back and I'd have like 99 or like 105, which for me was high, right? Blood sugar, versus if I like ate eggs and bacon, then my blood sugar would be like 80 because it was stressful on my body. So, and I talked about fasting a lot in my cookbooks, especially not so much my second book, but my first book, because it was a really big part when I was on keto and it really helped me.
Yeah.
I think that if women want to fast, or like people with periods of reproductive age, if they want to fast, what I recommend is this. Don't skip breakfast. Skipping breakfast is like, just, you're going to set your adrenals, like you're just going to mess up your like your cortisol is going to spike, because our cortisol is already naturally high in the morning. It's how like our body wakes up. So don't skip breakfast. Eat within an hour of waking up. For the love of God, don't have coffee on an empty stomach, because that's the worst for your hormones. I know. I do it too. And it's so bad for us. Try not to.
That is my breakfast.
I know. I know. No,
that's her breakfast,
like,
lunch, and dinner.
Like,
let me set the record straight. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Oh my God, no. It's like so bad for, and so I get it. It's hard for me too, because I did it for so many years. I literally was like a bulletproof coffee girl for so many years. But I think that as I got older, like again, maybe when I was 25, it'd be cool, but it just made my hormones angry. So I think that fasting can have its benefits. Like the data is irrefutable. However, most of the data, the studies are also done on men, not women, you know? So like my boyfriend was doing intermittent fasting, like 1 meal a day. And he was like, oh my God, he looked like 20 years younger. He looked incredible. But if I do it, I get like, I can't sleep and my hair starts falling out and I get like, and like, my body stresses out. So if I do want to fast, it has to be like, eat breakfast, then coffee, have a good lunch, have like a snack around like 4, and then don't eat till the next day. So like maybe if you want to fast, skip dinner.
Like earlier dinner than not so late eating. Okay.
Right. Yeah. That would be the only way that for like people of reproductive age, like if you're ovulating, that's the way to do it, because if not, it stresses out your body too much. And like, again, our body like doesn't like, we are primal beings living in a modern world. So you're skipping meals and your body's like, whoa, like war, famine, what's happening? Why can't I get food? Like food insecurity. And so you're going to start holding on. So I work with a lot of women, like, I'm fasting, I'm working out and this and that, I keep gaining weight. And I'm like, yeah, spoiler, you actually got to eat more and move less. And they're like, what? Because it's going to mess up your thyroid. It's really just, your body's just like pump the brakes. And we talked about that underlying stress that everyone's dealing with now, the collective stress of the world. That's adding to it too. So now it's not the time to do that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But there are benefits in terms of like the autophagy. I will say that like when I did do fast, like for example, actually Tara Grant and I were having a conversation about this about 2 years ago, that she was experimenting with long-term fasts. And she was saying that she found that if she could do like a 24 to 48 hour fast, she could eat whatever she wanted. So like, I could eat Wonder Bread as long as I fast before and after I eat it. But I'm like, girl, I don't like bread.
Ain't nobody about to starve for 2 days.
Right. That's what I said. I was like, I'm glad that you're biohacking, but like, I'm not able to not eat for 3 days to have a piece of bread. But I remember in 2019 or something, I went to KetoCon, but I remember I did this 3-day fast. And I will say that like for a month after that long fast, I felt like the best I had. Like it was insane. Like my body, I just felt like there's no inflammation at all. Like it was my joints, I just felt lighter. It was really great. So I know the science behind it. I just think that like in practice, in the real world, you know, if we lived all in like a little utopia where we could meditate all day and like walk barefoot in the sunshine, could fasting be better for us? Yes. But as like people who live in this dumpster fire, is it the best? Probably not.
Yeah. That's really, really interesting.
Beautiful. I mean,
and then what, so we had talked about kind of like what you offer for HS patients. Is it something that you only do like at certain times, or is it like a pre-recorded thing that we can go on and purchase, or?
Yeah, so my holistic, it's called holistic HS or holistic hydrodynamics. So the course is on Teachable, and so you buy it and you have lifetime access to it. It is pre-recorded, like, so it's a video and then everything's written because I like it to be accessible. So everything's on written format and video format. With the meal plans and the downloads are all there. So that's just lifetime access. I do offer for the people who buy the course like a super discounted one-on-one call with me because a lot of people like want that one-on-one. And then I also just offer coaching, which my coaching hours are like kind of weird because I'm in Hawaii and also I have like other jobs, but I also offer that because some people just really want that like hand-holding kind of walkthrough. And the people who tend to come to me are the ones who've like, Humira didn't work for me, or like I had to get off of it because it caused like lupus, or like they've tried other treatments and they're kind of at their like
wits end,
and they're and that's kind of when people end up with me. But I do, so I can do, and I can offer like GI maps and like stool testing and stuff like that, which is important sometimes because I like to offer those as like a last resort because they are expensive. But if you're really struggling to troubleshoot, it could be like a severe underlying issue, that you need to test for. Like I always tell people, like, don't be doing protocols, like don't go on, like, just now there's a whole thing with parasites. I get comments at least 5 a day.
It's ridiculous.
At least 5 a day that autoimmune stuff is caused by parasites. I'm like, calm down. So I'm like, we can test for them if you think so, but like test, don't guess. Like if you're before, like you said earlier, the L-lysine, like I hate that people are like, don't go on supplements just willy-nilly because they can cause harm, as well. L-lysine is really helpful for people who have like lichen planus, or the one in the mouth, right, for oral sores, but not necessarily for HS. Also, guess what food is super high in L-lysine naturally? Tomatoes. Isn't that interesting?
Nightshade.
Right? So weird, right? So it's like if the remedy is in the poison, like, is it really what we need? I don't know. I have like a weird thing with that. And like I did a video explaining like why the benefits could be, but I always tell people like same thing with berberine, same thing with, like any just be careful. Like don't just buy, you can go online and spend hundreds of dollars on supplements and you're gonna end up worse off,
Well, and the thing is, if you don't know what your body is lacking, how do you know what to supplement?
Right.
I mean, so like with the L-lysine thing, it's like, but did anybody get any testing done? Like, do you know if you're deficient on it? And then you just
like, no, I just feel better.
Yeah. It was
or like B vitamins. Like B vitamins can, like, if you overdo B vitamins, like you can like seriously get sick. And like people are behind here like, oh, because I heard they give you energy. I'm like, no, And I think that like if you're really in tune with your body, like for example, like I know when I need B vitamins because I crave liver. Like I will crave, which is super weird because like, I mean, I like liver, but not that much, But I'll like really like, I'll be like, I really want pate right now. And I'm like, okay, I'm low on B vitamins, but I'll eat pate, which is, that's where I get my B vitamins from. And then when I know when I'm done, when I don't need any more, because literally I'm like, well, I don't want it.
Yeah.
But it took me a long time to get this in tune with my body, like a long time. Like I was just like, even when I was pregnant, like I hadn't started all this journey yet. And I remember like just being kind of like, like kind of like, just like this, my body is just doing its thing. Like, I don't know what's happening, and it's weird because now I'm very much like, what's happening? I just, any little thing I like know it's, the feedback loop is strong,
That's good. That's so good.
Practice. It takes practice.
Mental health just plays such a big role. Like you can't even make these proper steps if your mental health isn't in line.
Yeah.
You can't properly exercise. You can't properly eat, right? You can't properly cook. You can't do any of these things unless your mental health is correct.
And in turn, like your mental health may get in the right place by taking those steps. It's such a hard,
it's like circle.
Somehow something has to start.
And you just have to try things, I guess, and figure out what works best for you.
Right. And I think the mental health piece, like during the process, like for me, I was a person that like, I started doing the food stuff because granted, food is like my joy. So for me, it was like a creative outlet / therapeutic. And so that helped me get to a better place. And then when I felt stronger and I felt better, but I did do a lot of work, like during that whole process, like I was in therapy, I worked with like energy healers, like I worked on like trauma that I had from when I was a kid. Because there are studies again, and I actually talked about this in my second book, that like, there is a really high prevalence. There was a study done with like over 200,000 people a few years ago. And they found that like, I think it was like 70% of people with like childhood, like adverse with adult autoimmune diagnoses have adverse childhood events.
Wow.
So, and a lot of people will onset their HS or other, chronic illness when like someone dies, during a divorce, like after a traumatic event, because it's like it is that trigger, right? We have the genetic predisposition, and then that stress or that trauma can just like change that because of the way that fight or flight in our body and fight or flight states or chronic fight or flight states impact everything else, right? We talked about like the inflammation and the gut health and all that stuff and the way it impacts our hormones. So that'll be that domino effect to trigger the chronic illness, but once that switches on,
it's on.
Yeah, can't turn it off.
So I just have one, maybe two more questions. I want to know how you feel about chlorophyll, the little crazy green drops everybody's starting to put in their water. And then are your courses like recommended for people who are pregnant?
So one, the chlorophyll thing, it's like everything else. Like, I don't know. I don't think freaking chlorophyll. I don't know. I think that it's one of those, it's like, just eat vegetables. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just, people love to overcomplicate health stuff. And like you mentioned earlier, like everyone wants the magic bullet, right? Magic bullet doesn't exist. If you want to take chlorophyll, if you feel good taking chlorophyll, by all means, take fucking chlorophyll. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to, but like, is it going to change your life? No, and unfortunately, I think that a lot of people, and that's why I kind of like, I always tell people, like, I'm like, I have a platform, but I'm not an influencer because I feel like, when athletic greens and everyone's selling athletic greens, like, oh my God, I take this green powder every day. And no, you don't.
I drink Bloom.
Right. Like they don't, like, oh my God.
It's so gross.
Which is literally just psyllium husk, and that's disgusting. And like, it's going to give you like blockage. Anyway, like people sell shit online, unfortunately. And people, as we know, and I get it, like I monetize, you monetize, but a lot of people unfortunately don't do it in an ethical way. And so just be really careful by what people are selling or promoting, because it's like they're going to sell you whatever. As for the courses, yes, you can definitely do them while pregnant. AIP is totally safe to do during pregnancy. It's about focusing on the nutrient density, not under eating, obviously, but and then don't do any of the supplements.
Okay.
But yeah, but AIP, and I can actually send resources to you because there's a lot of I have several colleagues that have done the autoimmune protocol and like that kind of dietary changes during pregnancy and even postpartum, which if I was to have another kid, I would do it because my HS got so much worse after
postpartum. It's gonna go crazy. I'm literally thinking about ways to, I'm like, okay, I think I need to just bite the bullet and buy your course. I already know it's gonna get bad after I give birth. It always does.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, what can I do to kind of like just help myself out and be a little.
Do you go into remission during pregnancy?
So for one pregnancy, I like kind of did, I didn't have any problems, but the other two were really rough.
Yeah, mine was rough. I had like literally like 2 days before I went into labor, had like a golf ball sized, like one like removed from my armpit. And it was horrible because like, it was just, mine was so bad. Granted, what my favorite food that I ate while I was pregnant?
Eggplant.
It was, well, not just eggplant. It was sourdough and Tillamook cheddar grilled cheese sandwiches with tomatoes and kale.
Oh my gosh.
In San Diego, and I had been working on this food truck, and that's like, and I would make these like crusty, like sourdough, which gluten kills me, tomato, oh my God, and cheese, which is like
dairy, all the dairy.
Not to mention crush the roof of your mouth.
Triple threat going.
It was so good, but it was terrible, and it was like, I mean, I otherwise had a very healthy pregnancy though, and I tell people that, like, otherwise, I mean, other than my HS being out of control, I had a super healthy pregnancy and like, healthy kid. It was a great pregnancy. And I tell people that like, it doesn't mean that it's going to like wreck everything. It doesn't mean you're overall unhealthy, which that's the crazy thing about HS, right? It's like, you can, in other aspects of your life, still
be healthy.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that your kids are necessarily going to have it. And I think that conversation is so confusing, right? Because it's like, it can be hereditary because of genetic predispositions, but is it going to have it? Like, I'm the only person in my family with HS, right? I'm pretty aware of like the sequence of events which kind of led for this to happen. Autoimmunity runs in the family, 100%. Psoriasis, multiple sclerosis, Hashimoto's, like we got it all. But HS specifically is just me. But I think that I like know why, in terms of like just my medical history, the medications I was on, the frequency of the medications, and dietary and the diet issues, right? I mentioned like crazy crash diet since I was little, overuse of antibiotics. Like I was textbook leaky gut since I was a kid, like chronic constipation, ear, nose, and throat issues, all this, whatever. But with my son, like I tried to like be like, okay, what can I do differently? So to help give him the best shot to not pull that trigger, And that's just what I'm doing with him, in terms of like making sure he's pretty healthy, but not being like a psycho about it, because you don't want to like give him
a fucking food complex.
He's gonna go to medical or the therapy to deal with your
But and so far so good. He's 10, so we're getting there. So we're in the age, we're in the, and I'm just kind of like, but like I know like if he overdoes gluten, like he developed a gluten intolerance around the time he was like 5, and I know that like if he overdoes it, he will get like the bumpies all over his arm kind of chest, and he'll sometimes even get like little bumpies like on his butt, and it's not pimples, but I'm still just like,
I got my eyes on you.
So I'm just, again, just I always tell people with kids, like, yes, but if you just, children are little people, and they also have like the same needs that we have nutritionally and all that. So just make sure that like, feed your kids, the way you would feed yourself if you wanted to be healthy,
Yeah, it's beautiful. You have been amazing. Can you tell us where to find you on social media, how everyone can purchase your services, all the good stuff?
Yeah. So I'm at the Castaway Kitchen is like my food blog, and the castawayKitchen.com is the website. And then I'm on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at the Castaway Kitchen. And then my name, Cristina Maria Curp, is my handle on TikTok, because I do talk food on TikTok, but I talk specifically HS and just answer like more the nutrition questions and the hormone questions and all that gut health stuff. So that's why it's just my name, because I feel like the people are like, what? Why kitchen? So on TikTok, and which is, I would say, my most HS dedicated channel. But there's links on my bio and all my platforms and on my website for my course. And then I have meal plans and my cookbooks, which are on Amazon, Made Whole and Made Homemade Simple. But there's also a ton of free resources, because I understand that not everyone can afford like the courses and stuff. So I always tell people, like, I have an HS survival guide. I have like shopping lists and resources like AIP guides and all this stuff for free. And all the recipes on my website are free. So, if the course or coaching or whatever is out of your budget, that's cool. I got you covered. Like, and I have an HS playlist on TikTok too. So there's a lot of free content out there as well that piece it together, and you can get.
And that's so special. I think it's really special for the HS community, especially because, like you said, not everybody can afford to, a one-on-one or a course, but to have, it's almost like this information is important enough that like there are some freebies in here, and I think it makes them feel good. And then it's I mean, not to put it that, but it's just perfect marketing, you know what I mean? Because they get the free resources, and then they're like, oh my gosh, like this really helped, or there was even a slight change, and then they want to come back for more. So I'm so thankful. I feel so good to kind of really just put like this personal connection. I feel like we've all been watching each other for so long, and I'm like, oh no, I know her. And then we got on, and I was like, oh wait, I don't know her. I love her though. Like, I'm so thankful for you.
It was fun to hang out.
Amazing. Yeah,
definitely.
Let's do it again.
I know, absolutely. And then we should chat about maybe we can do some giveaways on HS Connect for a couple of your courses too, for people, because we'd like to support people through their journey, and we know as well that not everyone can afford it. So we'll have to chat about that and do some giveaways.
I'd love that.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Cristina, for joining us. Everyone, please go follow her. She's she's adorable, she's funny, and she's got amazing, taste, and can teach us all a lot about HS and cooking, and I'm all for it. Yeah. So thank you again for joining us. It was so much fun to have you. Thank you everyone for tuning into this episode of Hidradenitis Suppurativas, and thank you so much to Insight for sponsoring this podcast, and we will see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
So fun.
Amazing.
I know, that was so much fun. Oh,
yeah.
I just love it. I know.
Yeah.
Well, and this one might not be coming to the social media retreat because she's supposed to have her baby that day.
Girl.
I know.
Okay, it happens.
Well, I
mean, that's a totally like okay reason. So.
I'm not finding it to be a totally okay reason.
I'm like, okay, I'll just have my baby 4 weeks early. It's fine.
Are you open to a C-section?
No. Like elective, let's just schedule it. Let's just,
schedule it so you can come. No.
Yeah. No, I'm really, really excited about that. I feel like since I moved to Hawaii again, like I feel so disconnected for like in-person things. And I really miss it because like before the pandemic, I was like going to a lot of like conferences and doing a lot of stuff, and like my book tours were always my favorite part of like my work, because I think connecting with the community is so important. And it's really interesting that like here in Hawaii there's so much HS. Like so much HS. It's so Hawaiian women, specifically among Hawaiian women, like it's funny because like I literally like I'll meet someone at the beach and just be talking to them and I can tell, like I can just tell I'm like by what they're wearing or whatever. And so I'll bring it up and I'll just be like, oh yeah, so I know I have this skin condition. They're like, oh, I have that too. And I'm like, oh no way, you know. But I see it so much here. And actually, and there's a lot of New Zealanders here, and like, you know, and so, and even in my community and among the Maori community too. So it's, I mean, the statistics show obviously, like, you know, in general, like Indigenous women of color, like Black women under 40 tend to be the biggest demographic. But I feel like here it's just crazy. And also I think a lot of it has to do with like the trauma, obviously, of being like a, you know, colonized, like people,
right.
and the way that it's changed their diet and the way that, you know, they eat now here, because just the staples are like spam and a lot of processed foods. But yeah, more community stuff is so key, because it empowers people to not feel alone, to not be ashamed.
Yes.
You know?
And it educates. I mean, so many of us, we're never all gonna like know it all, you know, so like everybody's story, you kind of just take little pieces and then you're like educated as you go back, and it's like your journey looks different. It's a different perspective.
Well, and I think the biggest thing that we can give the community is empowerment, to know that they're not like, you're not at the mercy of, like, unfortunately, shitty doctors, which so many people in the community just get the worst advice from their doctors and the worst care plans that like do more harm than good. And like, I've luckily felt empowered enough to like, I've walked out of doctors, I've been like, no, absolutely not. Like, I decline, no thank you. Because people are like, oh, my doctor made me. I'm like, what do you mean they made you? If you don't have to do what they say, you can say no, you know, or like, you
we got authority issues over here.
Yeah. And so like, if the doctor is Googling that shit in front of you, don't do what they say. Like, it happened to me. I've literally had a doctor Google it in front of me and then try to tell me what to do. And I'm like, maybe
not today.
Not so much. Not today, Satan. And I think that like, and you know, that empowerment and like, again, like body literacy and like knowing that like you have a say in your care plan is so key, because yeah, we're just at the mercy of like so much bad information out there.
Yes, totally. Oh my gosh. All right, we'll let you go back to your kids.
Oh my God, I don't want to go. Ugh.
Okay, you want to just chat with us all day? We're cool with that too.
I hate carnivals. I know.
I know.
Terrible, but are you kidding me? I don't want to go to a petting zoo. It's overstimulating.
Yes. Oh my God. I adore you. I will email you and see if we can put something together, give away like maybe 2 classes or something. And awesome. All right. Thank you.
Bye.
I love you
guys.
Bye. Hydradenitis super divas. If you've got HS, you'll want to meet us. It's not your fault. Put the shame to a halt. HS divas know how to have a ball. The hydradenitis